I make this video as a supplement to the previous video I've just very recently released on the topic of loneliness. The reason being that I didn't quite touch on a lot of the things I would have liked to on the topic. I kind of beat around the bush. I do tend to get carried away, and you'll notice that if you've watched that, I recognize that having made the video. And, consider this the first of many revisions I plan to make on this and other videos, both new and old. There's always things to add, there's always development, there's always changes in my thinking. I'm always learning new things, and I hope to share that with you. And like I said, there's always improvement to be made, and I didn't do as good a job as I would have liked. So consider this the deep dive or the dissection of the topic of loneliness, the first of a series. And thank you for watching in advance. Thank you. So what is loneliness? Why do we feel loneliness? Who feels loneliness? And many other questions that I like to consider. And we can start. I'll start by defining what loneliness is for me, how I define it, and understand it. And so you can really look at loneliness, or being alone, feeling lonely. I really like the term lonesome, kind of like a country sort of feel to it, but you can really look at the idea of loneliness one of two ways, or both if you so choose. The first being as an emotion. That implies that it is not necessarily so rooted in us or so permanent or long-term. Whereas you can also look at loneliness as a state of being. And I differentiate between emotions and states of being as such. So when we have an emotion, it's shorter term. It's in response to something. And a state of being would be, a series of emotions or characterizations, or it would influence our actions more heavily than an emotion would in a series. And that may not make very much sense, and I'll explain that more fully. But emotion or loneliness as an emotion is sometimes a nicer way to think about it, because it doesn't seem so permanent. It doesn't seem so pessimistic as loneliness as a state of being. And so whether you choose to think about it one of these ways, or in your own way, or both ways, however you want to think about loneliness, that's just helping me to build this structure that has become kind of a consistency in my videos. It helps my train of thought. So loneliness, loneliness is a lack of your meeting of the social needs that you have as a complex, intelligent life form, right? So, just as all life needs water, social creatures need social connection, and we need it at varying degrees, right? Some people may create these vast networks of people. They have a plethora of friends and family surrounding them, and they're constantly getting feedback, and that is what they need. While other people can do really well with just a few, quality friends, and that works for them. And so, people need different amounts of social, outlet at varying degrees. It depends on you. And so I've also characterized these different criteria dependent upon the type of person that you are, and helping you to understand where areas that you can strengthen for yourself. For me, I know that being a very anxious person, and I've talked about this before, so much so that at times it can be debilitating. Just making me a very reserved person, making it hard for me to put myself out there, to connect with people, and to strengthen my network. And although I do value that network, it's so ever hard for it to grow because fear of judgment, fear of, whatever it may be. And I know a lot of people feel like that. I know that they, have worries about whether, people are always talking about them or thinking about them negatively, or you're always worried about people talking about you behind your back. You don't want to give them reasons to dislike you. It always seems like, people don't really like you as much as they, you want them to, and I totally understand that. It's very difficult. We also see, nowadays it's becoming ever so hard to trust people. It feels like every day now, people give us reasons not to trust them. It's hard to find people we confide in, and so I kind of see my social network or this idea of your social outlet as you kind of have one of two things, or you have these two areas that you can strengthen. The first would be that of your physical, or not your physical, but your overall network of friends, of family, of companions, of comrades, whatever it may be. You have your network of people that your structure, your infrastructure of social, and then you have your partner, or your significant other, your intimate relationship, whatever that looks like to you. And people have so many different. There are so many different versions of these things, just as we all have varied experience with growing up and our family structure. We will also have varied experience with our friend and family and partner and whatever else it may be. So just keep that in mind, that it's always going to be unique to you as a person. But what is not unique is the feeling of loneliness in that though some aspect of these criteria is not being met. So recognize those areas, know that they are different, but that they share many similarities. Okay, so whether you choose to look at loneliness as an emotion, something that is shorter term, something that you have more control over, and you feel like it doesn't affect you as much as for someone that it may be a large aspect or a large part of their life. It may be more of a state of being for some of us, and we feel like we're in sort of a rut that we need to get out of, or that can be solved by having this great friend group or by meeting this great person. And while that is it definitely may help, you want to be someone that's valuable and strengthened independently. You don't want to have to rely on a network or on a partner in order to strengthen you, because how would you wouldn't want someone to rely on you for those sorts of things. So why should you rely on them for those sorts of things? Really, all these different sorts of relationships, whether it be through your network, with your friends, with your people, or with your person, your partner, it really shouldn't come down to them of whether you're lonely or not. And so for some people, we see that a network is enough for them to not feel lonely. Like I've said, everyone is so different, and some people don't necessarily need a partner or need that outlet. They can do well with their friends and their family and create their own specialized, unique network, whereas there are people who only need a partner, and they use their partner as their network and all of these things, and as their support and confidence and trust, and everything is in that one person. and both are valuable and it can work. There's definitely pros and cons to both of them. I think, speaking as someone who values both, I know that I mean, ideally, you have kind of eggs in both baskets, right? Like, I think diversifying your network and having someone you can spend your life with and confide in and trust in, and also having people outside of that in your network and people in your career or hobbies or other things like that can help you to combat the feelings of loneliness. And I'll reiterate, I really have so much to learn about this, but I know that it's such a prevalent issue. We are feeling, we're reporting feelings, both men and women. Everyone is reporting feelings of unprecedented amounts of loneliness, and it is such an issue. And I want to start a discussion on it because it's only going to be getting worse. So, helping to better understand it, it helps me to think of it in these ways, breaking it down, grouping it down, formulating it, whatever. It just helps me. But what also helps me is a discussion and ideas, because two brains are better than one, and 100 are better than two. So, just opening it up to discussion and continuing the conversation, and another video on the topic of loneliness, which I hope to make many more in this sequence or this series. So before I end, and I'm trying so very hard not to go off on a tangent or talk about something unrelated to the topic, so I'm just going to stay on track here. The last thing I want to mention and talk about or talk to you about is the dangers of loneliness and when loneliness can become a problem. And it is, I think people need to understand now, and I think one of the reasons we're reporting loneliness being such an issue is because people don't think that it's okay to feel negative emotions. People don't feel like it's okay to feel sad. They don't want to feel sad. And that's of course understandable. I don't know that there's anyone who wants to feel sad all of the time. But, we feel lonely and we feel sad for a reason. And it helps us to kind of take a step back, to slow down. I'm starting to coin this term, really. But to really, visualize and appreciate when things are good. And we shouldn't, make our lives devoid of all these negative emotions. We need to feel sadness, in varied amounts. More minute than that of, happiness. But they're important. And they're what make us such complex, intellectual beings. We also need to feel loneliness because it gives us a sense of the weight of certain aspects of our lives. We understand how important having a good partner is when we're lonely, and we strive for that, and we set goals, and we value quality friends. And so loneliness can become dangerous when we are, stuck in this indefinitely ending rut we don't see any end to, and it becomes counterintuitive after such a long time. We start to not only change the way we look at ourselves and devalue ourselves, but we start to change our expectations and thoughts on others. We start to almost become like resentful of other people because they have things that we don't, and then that starts to play into envy or to jealousy. And I think loneliness as an emotion or as a state of being, either one can become dangerous. But as I mentioned, I associate the emotion of loneliness as a shorter term, and I think that may be the safer bet as far as loneliness goes. Whereas if we make loneliness this state of being and we're stuck in our state of being in this rut of loneliness, of being alone, we start to kind of get those negative associations. So, let's you and I work together on finding some ways of not feeling so alone, because we aren't alone, and it does feel like we are alone, and we are, there are aspects of our lives that we are alone, and there are parts of our lives where we are the only ones, and that's okay. The most understanding person of you will always be yourself, and it's good to understand that you are your best friend, and sometimes it's okay to look out for number one. But remember that there's all these other people, and they're maybe feeling very similar to the way you are. I know that it's okay to feel that way. I recognize that, and although it is hard sometimes, it's just a part of life. But we can work towards solutions, and that's what I hope to do with these videos. So, here's another video on loneliness. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.